Hello everybody, welcome to Pottery Online, and today I'm going to talk about our first project, working on the pinch pots. So I've got my bag of air dry clay, and I just want to review this again to make sure we keep our clay nice and wet. I'm only working with a small piece. And then really important here, I'm going to seal the bag. I'm pushing the air out of the bag after I finish. Now, if the clay is a little bit dry, you can also add a teeny bit of water, teeny tiny, to the bag, okay? Push that air out, twist that closed, and then set that somewhere aside, okay? I always sit it on my twist. Sit on the twist. And then that will keep the bag sealed, okay? No air to dry that clay. So I also want to take my ring off. I'm going to take off any jewelry that you have. So I have a wire cutter, but you can use a knife, you can use a blade. I could even use this to cut the clay, okay? Even my hands, I can just dig out a piece of clay. So my board is covered with fabric, kind of makes it a little more resistant. The clay doesn't want to stick to it. Clay will stick to plastic, it'll like stick to wood. So, you know, I can roll it really well. Wooden boards work good as well. And you can staple your fabric to the back. You could also work on like a wooden cutting board, and pieces of cardboard also work fairly well as just kind of a work surface. And they're also good for storing pieces and moving around. I have my piece from earlier, and it's been wrapped up, it's been sealed up tight for a couple of days. And here is the pinch pot version 1. So for this project, I want you to create at least 2 pinch pots. And I've gotten so accustomed to this, I'm kind of rushing through this as I talk about the assignment. But you do want to take your time. If you're moving too fast, if you're pinching too hard, it'll make these big dents in the piece, and it makes it hard to make the piece kind of smooth and uniform. I know I may probably make this look way too easy, but it may take a couple of times to get to that point where it's fairly smooth and even. Okay, so it's important to go nice and slow for the pinch pot, and there are a couple of goals for the project. The first, of course, is getting good at making a pinch pot, and that may take you a couple of times. It's okay if the first piece comes out terrible. What matters is that you learn from that, pick yourself up, move on, and keep practicing, because it's really with practice that you get really good. And the second goal of the project is to incorporate art history. There are little introductions to the pottery of ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, ancient China, and indigenous America in the past 2 reading modules. Now, it's just an introduction. You can definitely look a lot deeper. And I forgot to mention that you can also incorporate other art history. Let's say if you're interested in ancient Africa or Scandinavia. So that is really an application of your creativity, okay? So not just the technique. What I'm doing here, this is technique. This is kind of craftsmanship that we looked at in the reading material. You know, what is craftsmanship? I always think of craftsmanship as love. You know, it's putting some love into your piece, into what you're making. And that's also joy too, you know, having fun, okay? So creativity is also finding ways, exploring ways to connect with yourself, to connect with your heart, to connect with your joy. So finding ways to make this fun for yourself. So that's a big part of the project, okay? And that's a good use for your sketchbook. That's a great time to take the sketchbook out, maybe take some notes or draw some pictures of the things that you're seeing in art history, and then to sketch some ideas of, okay, how do I do this? How do I put these two pieces together? Okay, so I'm also kind of patting the bottom of my pinch pot because my top is really uneven, and that helps it kind of line up. So I want to show you some of the steps that you can take at the next phase. So this is my pinch pot from a couple of days ago, and it's been in the bag, but it's starting to get fairly firm, fairly hard, okay? And it's at a really good point to carve. And you may have different tools from me, but a lot of your kits may come with a tool like this that you can use to carve the clay. So I can carve to smooth things out, to even things out, but I can also carve patterns. And I really love African art. And I have a lot of artwork that I've studied over the years. So I'm thinking of adding a pattern along the outside of this piece. First, I want to kind of smooth it down. So here's a good way to use water also. I can actually take my sponge, and water will really help me smooth this out. Kind of makes it slippery. So my fingers slide. And as they're slipping and sliding, it's getting smoother and smoother. And smoother and smoother. I want to even that out a little bit. Whoa, too much of a dig. So let's even that out. I love clay because it's very forgiving. If you dig a little too deep, you can add some. But as it gets really dry, you can't really glue clay together. Now, air dry clay is much, much more forgiving. There is some content this week about the kiln and firing clay, because I also want to prepare you for the next step. I know that many of you are really interested in art, and if you go on next quarter, next year, and take a pottery level 2, you might be working with clay that is fired, maybe have the chance to work on the wheel, which is super fun, and work with glazes and the kiln, firing pieces. You know, this is how cups and bowls, things that we eat and drink out of, are made. The pieces that we make are not food safe. They are decorative, but I do want to prepare you for going on and more pottery, of course, and studying more ceramics. So if you take another, pottery level 2, or I'm hopefully coming back into the Edmonds studio, taking more pottery with me, that you will be prepared, that you will have some content, some knowledge, and be ready. Okay, so the next step that I'd like to show you is how to decorate your piece and also how to add other pieces of clay. So I actually want to put like a little foot on this piece so that it kind of stands up. I'm going to make like a ring bowl out of this. So I'm going to make a coil and make a foot. Now, disclaimer, I'm really bad at making coils. But when you go off, I've learned that you can kind of twist them like a pretzel, and it actually helps your coil come back on track, which, if you're me, they always go off track. I always make them flat. See, that went flat again. So I can twist it and roll that. And when the clay starts to get dry, okay, the drier your clay is, the harder it is to attach another piece of clay. And there's a little step that we can take to make that easier, okay? It is called slip and score. And this is the same step that you would take. I made it a little too thin, so I'm kind of squishing it back. This is the step that you would take with clay that you fire as well. Okay. And the slip is just wet clay, or you could use water. And the water's kind of like a glue. And the scoring is just cutting into the clay. And those little cuts kind of help create a place that the clay can stick together. So there's the start of my little foot. And I want to make sure I got it in the right place. Just make sure it's pretty level. Just going to turn it around. Oh, I could even do it like that. Kind of make it a little different. Okay. So I kind of see where that sticks. And then I have some sharper tools. And I'm just going to scratch it all up. And when you're scoring, you really do want to scratch it really well. You don't want to do it neatly. You really want to cut and score the clay. And this creates a place for it to connect together really well. When you're firing clay, this is even more important because little air bubbles actually explode in the kiln. So this is a great step to learn, because this is something that you can take with you to the next step. So now I'm going to add some slip. So score and then slip. And I don't really have slip, but I can use water. So just a little bit of water. It's not soaking wet. Just a little bit of water, just enough to kind of glue it together. And then when I press these two pieces together, they're going to press together really well. And then I can come along with my fingers, and I can also use my tools. I have some favorite tools for this. And get to know your tools, kind of practice working with them. You'll find you have favorites that make different shapes that you like, and do different things. See, I'm just kind of dragging those two pieces together. And I also want to show you how to carve into clay. And with a sharp tool, you can make an incision and carve into the clay. I'm moving pretty quickly for the demo. And for good craftsmanship, take your time. Take it nice and slow. But if I did that, this would be an hour-long video. And I don't want you watching me for an hour. I want you making your piece for an hour. So just know, disclaimer, I'm moving a little fast for the demo. Take your time. Slow and steady. Take your time. Okay, so I would probably spend a lot more time smoothing that out, making that really nice. Whoops, tool went flying. Here's my other little tool. I like this one for the inside. And pressing the inside together. Here we go. There we go. And there we go. Okay. So again, I'm going to come back to that. I'll come back to this. I'll probably work on this in class a little bit later today. Okay. Kind of perfect that. But for carving, you know, anything that has kind of a sharp to it, you know, that will subtract the clay. And so I already have a pattern that I've sketched out that's, you know, in my mind that I'm thinking about. And you can use your sketchbook to help you kind of get some ideas for this. And I really like geometric patterns. So I'm just carving that in. And then I'm going to continue it. And you can carve the clay, you can subtract the clay, you can add to the clay. and kind of get creative and bring some art history into your piece. So this is a pattern from African pottery that I really like. Whoops. If you make a little boo-boo, you can just smooth it over. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to come back and show you the finish of this piece a little later. Have fun pinching and sculpting and carving. When you do finish, make sure you wipe your hands, and then I'm going to throw away my little bits and pieces, and I'm also going to wipe the clay off of my tools. Don't get scared about what we learned about safety. As long as you're taking some steps to clean up your tools and things like that, you'll be just fine. All of that happens over prolonged exposure, years and years of exposure. So it's important to start some good safety practices when you're just starting, and then you'll always have a safe studio. Okay, have fun. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.